Hi, my name is Shayna, and this is a presentation on the safe, legal, and ethical use of digital information and technology. The areas that this presentation will cover are the history of the Internet, copyright law, ethical use, the do's of fair use, the do-nots of fair use, safety concerns, and parental controls. In 1982, the first true Internet was created with no single owner to say how it should be run. The Internet was created in the United States more than 50 years ago as a weapon in the Cold War. In 1987, there were nearly 300,000 hosts on the Internet. In 1989, AOL was launched. Many youth today are likely to have no idea what AOL is. On its heels, the World Wide Web was established in 1990 by Tim Berners-Lee to ensure information, once created, could be used repeatedly. With the founding of the World Wide Web begins the popularity of the Internet. By 1993, the White House and the United Nations came online, beginning the .gov domain names. By 1995, the web became commercialized, and in 1998, Google was created. With the popularity of the Internet and the accessibility to digitalized information, the Internet creates further awareness to the issues of copyright and fair use laws. Copyright is defined as the legal right created by the law of a country that grants the creator of an original work exclusive rights to its use and distribution, usually for a limited time with the intention of enabling the creator to receive compensation for the intellectual effort. Copyright law of the United States of America is contained in Title 17, Chapter 5 of the United States Code. This document includes data concerning infringement of copyright, remedies for infringement, criminal offenses, and limitation on actions. Fraudulent copyright notice, fraudulent removal of copyright notices, and false representation all result in a hefty fine of not more than $2,500. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act was signed into law by President Clinton in October of 1998. This U.S. Copyright Act implements two 1996 treaties of the World Intellectual Property Organization. The DMCA modified the details of copyright law by introducing a royalty setting process for Internet music and included exemptions for library and archival. The DMCA includes restrictions on circumventing technology or manufacturing the products, where controls of access on copyrighted materials have been established. An example of this would be an encryption key or lock that would prevent unauthorized access of viewing. Another stipulation of the DMCA are the provisions that Internet service providers cannot be held liable for storage or transmission of copyright materials if that Internet service provider ensures that it will immediately inform of the presence of copyright infringed material on its network and immediately pull the information. Another act granting an exemption from copyright infringement is the Audio Home Recording Act of 1992. I want to first define a digital audio recording device. This is any device used in making a digital audio copy recording for private use. The Audio Home Recording Act exemption focuses on digital recording devices such as MP3 players. This act grants an exemption from copyright infringement suits for the use of an approved digital audio recording device to make personal copies of musical recordings. There was a case argued with the U.S. Court of Appeals against Diamond Multimedia Systems, stating that they had violated the act by making copies of digital audio files from a computer hard drive that stored them so they could be played again. The court found that since the MP3 player could only make a reproduction through a computer attached to the device, it did not meet the description of a digital audio recording device. Copyright infringement will continue to be a topic that is scrutinized, partly because of the economic impact. Piracy in countries overseas resulted in an estimated $3.5 billion in revenue loss during 2003. There are many more acts that have been established from 1982 to 2008 to identify parameters and law concerning copyright infringement, to include the Berne Convention Implementation Act of 1988, the Piracy and Counterfeiting Amendment Act of 1982, the Artists' Right and Theft Prevention Act of 2005, and the Fairness in Music Licensing Act of 1998. Another issue concerning digital information is its ethical use. When we discuss ethical use of information, what comes to mind to me is the accuracy of the information being disseminated and plagiarism of content. According to a paper written by Professor Mutula at the University of Botswana, he states there are 4 main ethical issues in the electronic age. One of the main ethical issues he described is privacy. Privacy is defined by what is shared about oneself, under what conditions, and with what safeguards on the internet. What is required to be revealed to others about oneself. Another issue described is accuracy. Accuracy is defined as who becomes responsible for authenticity, fidelity, and accuracy of information. If mistakes are made in the material presented, who would be responsible for the errors? The third ethical issue is property. Who accounts and owns the information? Is there a price associated with the distribution of the information? Who owns the means that the information travels over? The last ethical issue is accessibility. Professor Mutula asked who has the right to obtain the information and what are the conditions and safeguards of it. Another huge ethical concern is plagiarism. Plagiarism is the act of taking responsibility for someone else's work and acting as if it were created by oneself. A statistic gathered from the Pew Research Center suggests that 55% of college presidents state that plagiarism has increased over the past 10 years. Among those that have seen an increase, 89% stated that computers and internet have played a major role. Most universities have policies in place concerning the ethical use of digital information and systems, and students face severe consequences if plagiarism takes place. For educators, fair use is an important term to understand. Some of the do's for fair use are: use copyright materials in the public domain. Public domain are those whose intellectual property rights have expired, have been forfeited, or are inapplicable. Use items that are out of copyright. This means that works were published before 1923. Use sources, where the license terms specifically allow you to reuse the items. Use small pieces of resources rather than the whole thing. For instance, maybe a little clip of a video. Ask permission from the copyright owner to allow you to use the materials. And lastly, always cite your sources. The do nots for educators concerning fair use are: do not think you won't get caught if you use copyrighted material. Don't credit an author and think you won't get into trouble. Don't assume that something not labeled copyright isn't copyrighted. Don't download music, video, or software from illegal sources. And do not copy entire works without permission. Concerns with the use of information on the internet also involve the safety of its users. Nearly 1 in 5 of youth received unwanted solicitation of sex through the internet. 3% of these youth received an aggressive solicitation involving offline contact, or attempts or requests for offline contact. 25% of the surveyed youth reported unwanted exposure to sexual material. Most kids are exposed to porn at less than 11 years of age. There are 15 million identity theft victims annually. In 2008, Congress directed the Federal Trade Commission to increase public awareness and provide education on promoting children's safe use of the internet. One site that Federal Trade Commission has developed is onguardonline.gov. Onguardonline.gov was created to help people guard against internet fraud. The Federal Trade Commission also developed a guide for parents to promote the use of the internet by children. With technology constantly evolving, so are the risks associated with the technology. This guide has several suggestions in keeping kids safe online. The first of those is simply talking with your kids about how they communicate online and off and encouraging them to think critically. Some of the things to discuss would be credibility of the content on the internet, manners and expectations for internet use. Other topics to consider would be the share of private information, bullying, and avoiding sex talk online. Another measure to instill is parental controls through the use of limiting time, blocking content, browsers used specifically for kids, and monitoring tools. It's important for parents to limit access to kids' profiles as well. One example of parental control software is one that I use at home with my kids. NetNanny is an online software monitoring program. This software protects its users from cyberbullying, pornography, predators, and internet addiction. Through the use of NetNanny, a parent can set parental controls such as setting access by use of specific keywords and websites according to the user. A parent can also monitor social media sites such as Facebook to see what the child is posting and with whom they are speaking with. Another parental control software program is OpenDNS. OpenDNS is utilized by some of the public school districts. This solution is much like NetNanny, but can be utilized to manage web access among many different devices that may access the internet. I found this parental control solution to be very useful because it also monitors anything brought into the home to include kids' friends' phones and computers. It's important for parents to establish rules and expectations for the use of electronic devices and the internet. Teach your kids to password protect their phones and computers. If you are a parent, you must set an example for your children and talk to them about consequences of inappropriate use of electronic devices. Teaching computer security and the protection of personal information to kids is another important factor in educating kids and keeping them and the system safe. In doing this, parents should teach their kids the importance of passwords, how to create them, and the significance of keeping them private. Some other important factors would be teaching kids the difference between HTTPS and HTTP. Predators not only solicit for sex, but may also solicit for personal information in hopes to steal identity. I am an advocate for FamilySecure.com. This is a website that monitors the use of social security numbers of family members to prevent identity theft. There are many different concerns that have been raised due to the introduction of the internet